when I was younger, if to have those experiences, it was an immediate attachment to my ego. It was like, oh, I'm the shit, right? Or the assumption like, this is how life's gonna be from now on, which then would lead to these huge emotional fall-offs, right? And so this was so different to move through an artistically gratifying experience with an audience, but to experience it with sort of from a position of gratitude, from a place of like, wow, it's so cool that this is happening. I know how special it is. I know how rare this is. And I know that like, you know, this film and my career still has such a long way to go. It was liberating and freeing. I've never really experienced anything like it. And what was so cool was that night was able to pass and move by. And I didn't have some sort of massive emotional hangover for the next week, you know, where I was like wallowing in sort of self-pity or whatever, because, you know, it was that real sort of promise of recovery, that you're going to be able to intuitively know how to handle things that used to baffle you, that you're going to be able to move through these experiences with a degree of maybe grace and humility.
Welcome to the Sober Curator podcast, where sobriety isn't just a lifestyle choice, it's the ultimate life hack. I'm Alysse Bryson, your fearless guide to a world where hangovers are canceled, fun is mandatory, and we still know how to shut down a dance floor, just with better shoes.
And I'm Tamara Routley, aka T-Bouge, your co-pilot, chaos coordinator, and the one who keeps Alysse from turning this podcast into a full-blown reality show. Buckle up, sober party people.
From lifestyle and travel to pop culture and zero-proof cocktails, we're serving up the stories, trends, and guests that prove sobriety isn't just about what you're missing. It's about finally remembering where you left your keys. Let's get the party started. Welcome to the Sober Curator podcast, where sober living meets pop culture with a dash of glitter and a shot of truth. I'm your host, Alysse Bryson, and today we're diving in to the creative cauldron of a filmmaker whose work isn't just powerful, it's personal. If you've ever ugly cried during a classic addiction drama or turned your manic early recovery journaling into screen-worthy dialogue, this episode is for you. Our guest today is Aaron Strand, filmmaker, podcaster, and all-around cinematic wizard. His debut feature film, Withdrawal, just premiered at the Atlanta Film Festival. And y'all, it's not your average indie flick. Drawing from his own recovery journey, Aaron spins a raw and riveting tale of love, withdrawal, and family chaos, set against the backdrop of heartbreaking beauty. When he's not behind the camera, he's behind the mic, hosting film podcasts and championing classic cinema at Atlanta's iconic Plaza Theater. Is it Plaza or Plaza?
You know, honestly, I've heard it pronounced both ways.
Okay, good. So we're going to say Plaza because it sounds fancy. Plaza. Yes. Fun fact about Aaron, I can't wait to hear this story. He once got 4 speeding tickets on a single road trip, which may or may not have been the universe's way of saying, hey, Aaron, slow down and welcome to the show.
Wow, what an intro. Thank you for having me. Creative cauldron. What a use of alliteration. No one's ever called me a creative cauldron before.
Yeah, that's right, buddy.
I feel like I got some witchcraft going on or something like that. Thank you for that. Happy to be here.
Yeah, we love having you. So at the Sober Curator, we don't dive too far into like the hitting of the rock bottom. We're more interested in what happened after the fact. So sure. I would love to dig in to one of your post-sobriety moments that changed everything and like led up to you creating this film. And maybe you want to start around your journaling and watching films about addiction, and we kind of go from there.
Yeah, for sure. So I, not to dope-a-log, drunk-a-log, whatever you have, too much, but basically like I was homeless in New York City and I had to come back to my hometown of Athens, Georgia, to get help because it was really cold and I was in a lot of pain. And of course, Athens, Georgia is, a small town and a small college town in Georgia. And it was a place I swore that I would never come back to. And so when I got here and I kind of like stumbled into sobriety through a mixture of coming into contact with 12 steps, I was already sort of using some medically assisted treatment. This was back in 2013, 2012.
Okay.
So Suboxone was like a little harder to come by. Doctors still needed licenses to get it. But I was doing that. And then I did a brief stint at an outpatient rehab facility is also part of my story. So anyway, but all that to say, I was incredibly miserable. And I was like, every single day was like, I can't wait to get back to New York City and quote unquote, starting my life again. I was just so unhappy. And because I had nothing else going on, I started just pouring, just like vomiting my resentments, my anger, my disappointment in myself and others into these journals and these notebooks. And one of the other things that I did, which, I've heard many another person in early recovery do, I started reaching back out to like old friends, old girls that I had like relationships with or stuff like that, to like tell them, how I was changing. And anyway, I ended up in a Facebook message conversation with a friend of mine from college.
Okay.
And at some point she I was telling her what was going on and she asked me what it was like. And I wrote this Facebook message where I described all the different characters in my brain, or like what active addiction felt like, with all these different characters telling me, that like, oh, there's like the child me is saying like, oh, like I just need my mom. But like the crazy me is saying like, I need to just like fucking slit my wrist so that everyone can like feel bad for me. And like all these different voices or whatever. And I wrote this, and so I wrote this Facebook message, and she responded to the Facebook message. She said, "This would be a great monologue." And she was a playwright in college, and that was the first time that anyone had ever encouraged like words that I had put down. Anytime anyone ever had encouraged writing from
had
me.
Had you shared your writing in that way before, or it just kind of happened?
No, absolutely not. I went to school for drama, as an actor, and I had worked as an actor, and I had worked as a musician. So I was I've spent my entire life as a working artist, but never with like words on a page, never with prose, not even really like songwriting or anything like that. Always steeped in language, but never coming from myself. And and somehow along the way in my head, I had always thought like, I can't write, like I'm not a good writer, And so her response was the first time that anyone had ever encouraged me. And like, it really meant a lot. I mean, like I'm here 12 years later, like still talking about this response.
And are you guys still Facebook friends?
We are still friends. I mean, we don't talk often. I've told her like, hey, Melanie, her name is Melanie Wallner. I've told her like, hey, I've started talking about this story, just so you know. Like I've been shouting you out and giving you credit.
Hey, thanks for changing my life. Hey, thanks.
Yeah, totally. So yeah, I know. I mean, thank you, Melanie Wallner. I mean, it's amazing what a little like well-timed encouragement can do to somebody.
Seriously.
Especially when I'm in that super broken, vulnerable place, just grasping for any kind of light at the end of the tunnel. My God. And so, with that little bit of encouragement and just the relief that I was feeling by putting words on the page, these ranting journal entries very quickly started to evolve into some semblance of dialogue. And I started writing some scripts. I wrote like a play about my experience. All of this is like, some of the worst writing you've ever read. I mean, it was bad. Like, I'm glad Melody encouraged me, but let's be real. Like, this was trash drama. But all that is to say that I just had a lot of learning to do. I had a lot of work to do when it comes to not only how to live my life sober, but also like how to write. And that began a 12-year journey that saw my focus and my life when it comes to relating to the dramatic arts shift from being an actor and finding more joy and love on sort of writing and directing side, which ultimately has culminated recently with this debut feature film.
That is incredible. I have to now. I need silly details, Aaron. What kind of journals did you have?
What kind of
yeah, was
journals?
it a spiral notebook? Was it like what kind of
Mm.
journals did you write in? Did they have lined paper?
Wow, we're
Uh-huh.
really getting deep in here.
We're
I'm
really in the
a
nitty gritty.
I'm a moleskin guy.
Okay,
I've always
moleskin.
loved a black moleskin. Although early on, I dabbled with the legal pad. You know, the like yellow
Oh,
page
okay.
legal pad,
I
like flipping
do.
over.
Yeah.
What I did do very quickly is I started writing diagonally, like in the opposite direction of the lines.
Wow.
Because it's
Okay.
more comfortable in my hand, and because I'm a rebel like that, it can't be contained
I
within
love that for you. And do you still
within the
have
lines.
all the journals?
Oh, of course I do.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
I have an entire crate in my attic right now that's filled with journals that go all the way back to when I was like 12 years old. God forbid anyone should ever open them and read them.
Well, I have to tell you, I'm a little jelly because I wish I don't want to redo anything that's happened in my life up until this moment. Like I take every single thing that happened. However, if I could change some things that didn't change the course of my life, I would journal and I would take more pictures and video earlier on
Oh my
because
God.
that's
Yes.
how I killed a few brain cells, Aaron, and so my memory isn't always the sharpest. And I identify with your story in so many ways, but like when you talk about not feeling like a writer, the fact that I write now is still very uncomfortable for me to say I'm a writer because I didn't go to school for that. That's not anything that I did in my profession. And so, I've got it over here that writers look like this and they're super smart and they're all these things that I'm not, right? And
Yeah.
so, but yeah, I think that's so cool that you have journals going back to when you were 12. Aaron, do you think that journaling is a little cheaper than therapy?
There's a lot of things that are cheaper than therapy. Not that I have anything against therapy. Whatever works for you, please go right ahead. But yeah, I have continued a sort of journaling practice. Although at this point, I journal like just for the sake of journaling less and less, and have found a way to sort of in my prose writing, script writing, what have you, I feel a real synergy at this stage of my life in terms of being able to express the things that are on the top of my brain and that I need getting out through a really sort of contained creative outlet. So I'm kind of grateful for that like journaling has like shifted into productivity, but in an honest, authentic way. Not to say that it'll be that way forever. I mean, I'm sure there'll come a time when like I just need the straight up journal again, but that's kind of what my writing practice looks like today.
Well, and I know there's power in putting pen to paper versus fingers to keyboards. And
yes, oh my God,
like there's a power in it that I'm sure science can explain it somehow. I don't know much about it, but I know that there's a difference.
Yes.
And,
I just had to relearn that lesson. Literally this weekend. I had a writing project that I have been banging my head against the wall on for 6 months or so. I knew it needed to get out of me, but in an effort for efficiency and not and whatever, I've always tried to do it on a computer, and I just get too distracted. And so literally 2 days ago, I went to a CVS, bought a brand new notebook. I put myself in a coffee shop, and over the course of 4 hours, wrote the thing that I've been trying to write for 6 months, but had to do it by hand in order to cut out the distractions. And so, yes, there is a magic between pen and paper that I hope people continue to appreciate as voice assisted writing and all these AI chatbots, take over the creative field.
And do you write in cursive or?
I do.
You do write in cursive, yeah.
Oh yeah.
I feel like cursive is a lost art with the younger generation. I know you're younger than me.
Yeah, right. They don't even
they have no idea.
Anymore.
No, they have no idea how to do it.
Yeah. I something I'm definitely like gonna be teaching my daughter, just personally. Sort of like the joys of cursive writing.
Absolutely. Well, I'm not going to start asking you what kind of pens you use. Don't worry. But I think that's super interesting. So, okay. So you've got all these journals from your past. You've been journaling forever. You had your Facebook moment with your friend. and that all led up to creating Withdrawal. So can you tell our listeners a little bit about what Withdrawal, like what it means to you and what the storyline is?
Yeah, well, what it means to me ultimately is I have been, for every year for 10 years, basically since I got sober, I said to myself, this is the year that I'm going to make a feature film. That has been my goal for a decade. And every year I have fallen short because it's not only very hard to do, but it's, generally, takes some money that I don't, generally have, like sitting in my pocket. And so it's hard to get those pieces together, especially for a first one. And, in late 2022, I think it was in November or so, I had a different feature film. It was a sort of a totally different subject matter, totally different genre. I had some producers attached and they backed out of the project on me, and the project fell through. And I was pissed. I was, mad because once again, yet another year where I haven't fulfilled my New Year's resolution. And so I was angry and kind of thinking, like, how can I pivot to something that I can do myself where I don't need anybody else? And there's lots of sort of adages within the sort of ultra low budget indie film world, that you generally want to tell a contained story. If you can put it all in a single location, that would be great. And I wish I had some sort of great origin story aha moment, but it was really just like a few elements just kind of pieced together in my head of like, I can tell a story that is, really inspired by my own experience as a former heroin addict. It's going to be held together by a love story. It's going to be the genre is going to be a love story between these two people. It's going to follow them through over the course of just 36 hours, a very contained story. And what's the most dramatic moment in the life of a young junkie, a young codependent couple dealing with addiction? It's going to follow the moment as they make their first ever decision to try to get on Suboxone. So it's going to follow them over the course of a single night as they withdraw from dope so that they can take the buprenorphine naloxone prescription in the morning. And this is something that I had firsthand experience with.
Sure.
And once those elements kind of like crystallize in my head, like everything happened so fast. I pitched the story to my wife. She was disappointed at first because I had just moved on from this other project, and she was like, didn't want me to like chase another rabbit down a hole. But I was like, listen, I just trust me. Like this is the one. This is the one. I know it. I pitched it to a couple of other friends of mine out in LA, and the pitch was like feeling really good. And this is the first time that I ever felt a sense of sort of intuitive certainty in my heart around a narrative structure that would allow me to tell a story about addiction, something that I have been trying to do for 10 years. And it went really fast. I wrote a 1-page treatment, then a 5-page treatment. And with that 5-page treatment, I felt empowered enough to like, I'm going to start finding actors. I'm just going to cast this thing. And we're going to flesh it out as we go. I don't want to get bogged down in another multi-year development process. Let's fucking go, dude. So that's how it all happened. I found a couple of actors that I'd never met before through a casting process, and we were off and running. So what it means to me is essentially the culmination of over a decade of work, both creatively and the gains that I've made in terms of as a storyteller and the craft and skill of filmmaking, and then of course in sobriety as well, because I mean, I wouldn't be I think everything happens for a reason, and things take the time that they take. This certainly took a lot longer than I wanted it to, and yet I think it took about 10 years for these sort of subjects to be a sandbox for me to play in, rather than a sort of some sort of like soul dredging purge that would really be more about me and my ego rather than about the story and what that story could potentially communicate to an audience.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Were there other people that worked on the film, the actors or anybody even behind the scenes that also identified as being in recovery?
Well, there was one person in particular who I really have to shout out. There's an actress that I knew initially as a yoga teacher, and she's this amazing woman named Jeannie Heaton, and we discovered that we basically had parallel lives. I went to the Stella Adler Conservatory through NYU. and when got out of school, fell into the nightlife scene of New York, quit acting, started a band. The whole time I was a junkie, and then I ended up a homeless drug addict. Jeannie Heaton did the exact same thing like 30 years prior.
Oh wow.
And we had and then we both ended up in Athens, Georgia, of all places.
That's so random.
So crazy to discover this about each other. And so there was a role of the story, as I've alluded to, follows this young couple. Their withdrawal, it follows them through a single night of heroin withdrawal as they try to get on Suboxone. And there's this critical role of the young woman's mother, who is like trying to help her daughter, but kind of in all the worst ways possible. And so Jeannie literally reached out to me, say, I really want to audition for this role. I haven't acted in like 20 years, but can I submit a tape? She did. It was amazing. The rest was history. To bring her onto the project really meant so much. Not only was she able to sort of educate the people around her, but in a weird way, she was acting with her, the character she was acting with, the girl, was essentially her younger self. And so it was this kind of very strange and I think therapeutic kind of situation for her, and that was really cool to see her to kind of dive into that work and take it so seriously. She was the only person off the top of my head here, and maybe I'm forgetting someone, but she was the only person that I knew specifically, that I knew from recovery, who I wanted to be involved in the project. But what was so cool is that I think, as a testament to sort of the working environment that we created, the sort of openness that we created, and certainly, a byproduct of me being so open with my story throughout the entire pre-production, production, post-production, distribution, I am constantly being approached by people saying, hey, my cousin, suffers with this, my dad, my mom, I've had this thing happen in my past. I don't talk about it publicly, but blah, 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 blah. And so, look, at this day and age, 2025 America, there is hardly a person alive in this country that has not been touched by this disease in one way or another. And so to create an environment where people feel safe and empowered to share those experiences certainly means a lot to me. And that's been a really, really cool aspect of the project.
And I too understand that the power of when you are public with your recovery, and if you're not comfortable, you don't need to be. Not everybody needs to be. But for those that are called to be, there is that thing that happens where people do pull you aside, or they slide into your DMs, or these conversations happen because you're right. It has touched so many people in some way, shape, or form. What was it like? What was it like to sit in the audience as your film played at the Atlanta Film Festival?
Ah, man, it's hard to summon the words. I mean, it has been such a long journey to get to this point. And you know what? The way I can describe it is that, look, when I was coming out of school and when I was still in active addiction, I had incredible opportunities come my way. I was very, very lucky in my artistic career very early on. And I couldn't appreciate any of it because I was a junkie. And I took it all for granted, right? And as you do in active addiction, right, I rode these incredible highs that led to these incredible crashes. Everything was just like a roller coaster, up and down, up and down, up and down. When I got sober, I thought that my creative career was going to pick up right where it left off. And it didn't. Instead, I feel like I was condemned to wander a creative desert for a decade where not much was really happening. I felt like I was working really hard, but projects were starting and falling apart. I felt like I was spinning my gears. No one wanted to cast me. No one wanted to hire me. I felt really, really lost. So to sit in an audience, a sold out house in a theater that is very, very special to our community, to see all of our cast and crew, some of whom don't live in Atlanta anymore, fly back to take part in this experience, to watch the movie work, to get to see these huge audible reactions, whether that was shock. There's a lot of laughter. One of the big things about the film is that, it's a tough subject matter, but we try to install quite a bit of levity to sort of relieve the tension throughout the story. So to watch those moments hit with an audience was incredibly gratifying. I mean, without doubt, it was one of the best nights of my life. However, what was so amazing was to be able to experience it in a way that, like I was saying, when I was younger, if to have those experiences, it was an immediate attachment to my ego. It was like, oh, I'm the shit, right? Or the assumption like this is how life's going to be from now on, which then would lead to these huge emotional fall offs, right? And so this was so different to move through an artistically gratifying experience with an audience, but to experience it with sort of from a position of gratitude, from a place of like, wow, it's so cool that this is happening. I know how special it is. I know how rare this is. And I know that, like, this film and my career still has such a long way to go. It was liberating and freeing. I've never really experienced anything like it. And what was so cool was that I was able to move. That night was able to pass and move by. And I didn't have some sort of massive emotional hangover for the next week, where I was like wallowing in sort of self-pity or whatever, because, it was that real sort of promise of recovery, that you're going to be able to intuitively know how to handle things that used to baffle you, that you're going to be able to move through these experiences with a degree of maybe grace and humility, whatever that actually means. So it was really cool in that regard. And, it's taken a long time to get here. So yeah.
That seems like such a cool thing. I've been to, in Seattle, we have the Seattle International Film Festival. So I love going to it. I love going to a film festival and all the different types of movies and documentaries and short films that you can see that you otherwise would have never heard of. Like there's a whole world out there for, and a lot of people don't even know about it when it comes to the magic that can happen on screen. So that is so cool. Did you have any negative reactions from people where you thought where there was like judgment?
No. I mean, there was a couple. So there's a scene in the film that I won't spoil, but it did elicit an incredibly strong reaction. Okay. And a few people did run out of the theater gagging.
Okay.
They came back in, but the scene was so effective that they did run out of the theater. Now, look, I cut my teeth back in the day working in sort of like the world of shock variety show performance in the New York nightlife world of sort of underground performance. And so I know that even though someone may go running out of the theater, this is an incredible accomplishment, like as an artist, you know what I mean? Like I take so much pride in those reactions. So I loved it. Anytime you can make someone run out of a theater because of like the content of what's happening on screen, not because they're bored, it is a massive win. So that was the sort of interesting thing that I've never experienced firsthand. And so that was kind of cool to see. Outside of that, I mean, look, like everybody's entitled to their opinion. The response to the film has been incredibly positive. We've gotten some glowing reviews across the board, glowing reviews from users on Letterbox. Of course, there's like a couple people sprinkled in, but frankly, you can read some of that criticism, and a lot of times it's a you problem. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, look, I do it, like you mentioned, I do this screening series at the Plaza Theater where I screen what I think are some of the greatest films ever made. I do a little history podcast before the film, and then we do an audience discussion after the film, and it all gets recorded as a podcast. It's called Behind the Slate. You can check it out wherever you get your podcasts. And one of the things that I always do as part of those screenings is generally right after the movie's over, and to kind of start the discussion going, I read something called low Letterboxd reviews, where I go through Letterbox and I find the lowest reviews for what are some of legitimately like the greatest movies ever made. Because no matter, it could be The Godfather, Star Wars, whatever. There are so many goddamn haters out there just ready to fucking go off on their terrible opinions. And they're always so funny. So, I do that, one, because it's hilarious, but two, to also remind myself that like in the world of art, like there's always going to be criticism out there, and you really, really can't take it personally.
No, and I had a friend remind me, like, when people start hating on you, that's when you know you're making a difference. And I was like,
Yeah,
okay,
exactly.
well, bring on the haters. Okay, so
Yeah.
so a few people ran out of the theater because of a certain scene. I can
Mhm.
only imagine. Did you have any kind of oopsies or funny things that happened during filming? Like any behind the scenes stories?
So overall, I think we did an incredible job, actually, in terms of organizing this film. Look, I made a promise to every single person that I worked with that, like, you're going to be taken care of. You were going to be treated with respect. You were going to leave this set every day feeling like an artist. I can't pay you as much as you're worth. Let's be very clear. But I'm going to make up for that gap in payment with a surplus of meaning, and that is my promise to you. And ultimately, I think we did a pretty good job of delivering on that promise, and that was really a byproduct of a sort of intense planning and safety and consideration for our casting crew. As far as Oopsie goes, so our lead actress, Millie Rose Evans, she had we did 2 blocks of filming because there's a flashback structure in the film. And so for the sort of present day, she dyed her hair black. This was her idea. It was like, we wanted this visual differentiator from the present to the past. And so she was going to dye her hair black. And for some reason, she's got this weird hair that like doesn't accept hair dye. So it was incredibly difficult to dye her hair. And the person who was helping us with the hair dye was like putting all these different black dyes in her hair, and her hair just was like not absorbing the dye. And at some point, she used a very light bleach solution to clean a little bit of the dye from her skin on her forehead. Well, her skin had this like horrible reaction to the bleach. So she showed up for the very first day of filming with these like breaking out in like rashes like all around her hairline.
Oh, no.
She was obviously like, she was not only in pain, but was like horribly upset by all of this. I was incredibly stressed out. This was like maybe like the greatest moment of tension on set. Oh, also we did have a second AC show up to work with COVID, and which like briefly shut down our set and we had to test everybody and like institute like a whole different sort of protocol system to keep everybody safe. Thankfully, it did not spread, but that was another moment of chaos. That was a very time specific problem. But outside, yeah, the skin reaction and the COVID diagnosis. Those were our 2 big set catastrophes.
And how many days did you shoot for?
We shot for 15 days total. And it was broken up into 2 blocks. Like, because I mentioned we had this flashback structure, we actually shot the flashbacks first in the summer, in August of 2023. We then took a 3-month break and came back and shot the primary storyline in late October, early November of that year. And so the seasons changed, the city looked different. The timeline felt really different, and we were able to give the actors sort of like a different look, and so it really helped kind of sell that time jump within the story.
Okay, very interesting. What was the editing process like? Because it's hard to kind of sometimes have to kill your darlings, right? Because you just have to get the story tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter.
I personally love that process.
Oh, you do?
And I do, only because I know at this point, like when I find a darling to kill, I just, it gives me satisfaction, because it's like, I don't want to be the type of person that thinks, like you only shit gold. You know what I mean? So like when it's obvious like that this needs to go, it's like, oh, yes, thank you, it's working. Really how the editing process worked is I sat down at my desktop computer and just banged it out. I gained like 30 pounds like over the 6 months of editing, because I just spent every spare moment when I didn't have to be, trying to make a little bit of money, editing this project. And so I was very sedentary. I've still got the weight and like the back problems from hunching over a computer for that long. I hunch over a computer a lot of times. So, not completely that fault, but it was definitely, I served as the primary editor, and, that was really the only way we were able to get it done for the budget number that we did.
Yeah. What were you snacking on when you were editing? What's your
potato
editing?
Potato chips. That is like my biggest, it's my biggest vice, my biggest addiction at this point. I really can't have them in the house, and I certainly can't have them while I'm editing at a computer. Yeah, potato chips.
And what kind? What's the brand? What's the flavor? I need details.
Oh, I try to mix it up, I try to like cycle through, I love a good barbecue. Sour cream and onion is like, I save that for vacation,
Mm-hmm. For a special occasion.
Yeah. My wife and I will grab a bag of Lay's sour cream and onion at the beach, but try to keep it away from the house.
You guys are wild. You're wild.
Whoa. Yeah, I know. Yeah, you never. That's the other funny thing is that like, I have to try to explain to people that when I was like, look, addiction took everything from me. It almost killed me. It took everything from my life. But there were like a number of years there where I was really quite cool. And now it's like I buy sour cream and onion chips on vacation with my 3-year-old,
Yeah.
But I have to try to explain to people. But once upon a time.
But I was
really
cool.
quite,
There was a minute
cool
that I
once.
was super cool.
I was cool
yeah,
once.
super cool.
Yeah. Well, but although I do like I much prefer my life now where I don't wake up hungover. I don't, I'm not putting anything into my veins. I get to be a dad and a husband, but I still get to make badass fucking movies that make people run out of the theater gagging. And that's really sort of the sweet spot that I would like to maintain for as long as possible.
I love that. Okay, so you've got your foot firmly planted in cinema and your heart is obviously rooted in recovery. How has pop culture influenced your life? Maybe what are some other films or shows that have inspired you along the way? Are there any actors that are in sober or in recovery that you consider aspirational? You'd share a bag of chips with them?
It's a good question. There's a lot of people that I would love to share a bag of chips with. But when it comes to like the things that really excite me, it is I really want to be shown something that I've never seen before. I want to be shown an aspect of the reality, the kind of gritty reality that I've never seen before. When I was first getting sober, that's when I was just hunting down every sort of drug addiction film that I could find, really looking for meaning and a way to explain what I had just experienced. And there's a number of films that have stuck with me that I continue to watch to this day. Jerry Schatzberg's The Panic in Needle Park is sort of an immediate go-to, an incredible film from 1970 starring young Al Pacino before The Godfather, and one of the greatest kind of heroine love stories that I've ever seen. There's a film from Germany called Christian F., which is absolutely incredible. It's a little hard to find right now because there is a rights dispute over the original German audio track along with the film. So the only one that's in circulation in the US right now is this awful English dubbed version, which is really, really doesn't work. But you can find bootlegs of the original German version online. But this film is absolutely incredible. It was produced by David Bowie, and David Bowie makes an appear. Yeah, they like, and the kid. So it's about these like 13-year-old heroin addicted prostitutes in Berlin, and it's based on a woman's actual autobiography. That is incredible. And and they're obsessed with Bowie, and they're obsessed with like Station to Station era 1977 Bowie. And because David Bowie produced it, the kids go to a David Bowie concert, and basically in the middle of the film, there's like a live David Bowie concert. It's fucking awesome.
That's pretty epic. That's pretty epic.
Yeah, it's really, really cool. Yeah, that movie kicks ass. There's also a movie again from the early 70s. It's by a filmmaker named Paul Morrissey, who was like part of the Andy Warhol factory sort of scene. It's a movie called Trash. Stars Joe D'Alessandro, who is another like Warhol superstar. And this is a movie, and it also stars Holly Woodlawn, which if you've listened to the Lou Reed song Walk on the Wild Side, it begins with the line, Holly came from Miami, FLA. Hitchhike her way across the USA, and plucked her eyebrows on the way. Yeah, that's Holly Woodlawn. So anyway, it stars as this sort of like oddball roommates and that are junkies, and they just like lay around and talk shit, and they just waste time. I mean, this is like a very avant-garde kind of film, But when I saw it, especially in those early days, it was just like, yes, like this is what it's like. This is so weird. This is so special. This is so non-Hollywood filmmaking. And yet it's like, there's something so real about it. And those are the movies that I continue to gravitate towards to this day, that are really showing this kind of like deep cutting honesty and truth, that are really reaching for it. I generally am I kind of despise the state of modern American filmmaking, that I think is overly dependent on sort of high concept plot structures. And then it hides everything behind either genre, IP, or these ultra saturated high contrast images that are just not what life really looks and feels like. And I think it does a disservice to us as the population, as an audience, because it creates a sort of eye candy fantasy world that doesn't actually resemble what we really look like. And certainly when it comes to the experience of active addiction, it does not create the sights, sounds, smells that experience is really like. So I always look for stuff that tries to go a little bit deeper. You inevitably lose audience that way, don't get the mass audience appeal that other stories would, but those are the things that still kind of like strike me to this day.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. I was actually watching, I was binging a show over the weekend, and the character is in NA. And so there's several, like in every episode, she basically goes to an NA meeting, and I'm watching it and I'm like, okay, it doesn't look like that. They don't talk like that. Like, I just got super judgy, super judgy. And then I was like, well, Alysse, meetings are different everywhere, even though they're kind of the same. They can be wildly different, but I'm like, no, that's a made up version. That's not, they didn't do their research, and just even the lighting, I was like, and it's not that pretty, like, and the chairs are not that organized. Like, like, it's like, come on. I find myself getting really judgy sometimes when I watch things, and, so that's
good. I mean, you should. It's incredibly infuriating when writers and filmmakers, craft these scenes. And granted, like, they're working quickly, they're all on time constraints, they're on budgets or whatever, but they've probably only ever seen other shows that feature a 12-step meeting. And so their entire experience is being based on other shows. It's like how every writer, whenever someone's giving birth, like, the character's water breaks. It's like, that's not actually
that's not actually how that usually happens.
Like, if your water's breaking, that is like, that's a concern. That's not like, and yet we're educating the entire world that like, well, your water breaks, like, time to go to the hospital. Like, that's just not how birth works. So it's all, yes. On the whole, my overall thoughts towards the American film industry is do better. But there's a lot of external pressures and constraints that sort of are the reason why it is the way it is. Yeah.
Well, I think we can say America, just in general right now, do better. Just in general with everything, just do better. Just everybody can do better. Yeah, that's another episode. That's another episode, Aaron.
Yeah, how much time you got?
Exactly. Well, as we wind down, we like to go into a segment we call Sober Shots. And I'm just going to ask you a couple of really quick questions, and you can answer them or not. What is your sober drink of choice? Like, what is your drink of choice? What do you like to drink?
Oh, so it's as boring as can be. Plain LaCroix. Plain or any brand,
not flavored.
Oh no, the flavors give me a headache. No, it's like just plain sparkling water. I drink like 8 cans a day. It's terrible.
Fascinating. All right, and are you an early bird or a night owl?
I have a 3-year-old. Of course, I'm an early bird. I'm an early bird. Yeah, I'm an early bird in the same way that a runner being chased by a bear is a runner. You know what I mean?
Got it. Check. Okay, and what is your 3-year-old into right now? Like, are you stuck watching Bluey? Like, what are you doing?
Wow, man, I'm really trying to limit the screen time. Oh, you know what she is into? Just as I say, I'm trying to limit the screen time. I brought her. I was a huge Godzilla fan as a kid. I love the Japanese Godzilla fans. And at the Plaza Theater in Atlanta, another community partner just screened Godzilla versus Mothra, the 1964 version.
Okay.
And I thought that my daughter could handle it, and I asked her if she wanted to go, and she said she wanted to go. So I took her. Her mind was blown. She loved it. She did such a good job. She didn't get scared at all. And now she's obsessed with Mothra and Godzilla. She asked me to tell her a bedtime story every night about Godzilla and Mothra. For some reason, she always wants them to drink lemonade, which is, I don't know where she picked that up from. It's hilarious.
Interesting.
But she's really into Godzilla and Mothra right now, which to me, I mean, this is like a dream come true.
That's adorable. Okay, you mentioned that you were a musician. What is your what's on your playlist right now? What are you listening to?
Oh my God. Yeah, my playlist has become really, I listen to a lot of ambient music while I work. So I've become very ambient focused. I love Brian Eno. Brian Eno is like my go-to guy. He recently did an album with a kind of underground UK dance musician, but sometimes ambient musician named Fred Again. Like Fred Again.
Okay.
Yeah. Fred Again. And so the Brian Eno Fred Again album has been my number one go-to album for the last 6 months. Absolutely incredible. And yeah, that's I'm an ambient guy now. I'm a married dad, Lay's chip eating ambient music fan. What has happened to me?
Sparkling water. Yep.
Sparkling water drinking.
Journaling.
What?
Yep.
Journaling. Yep. What happened? The
promises. Aaron, they're coming true.
The promises have come true. Oh my God. I'm so glad they didn't write the ambient music part in the book. I might not have stuck around.
Well, I'm like that too. When I find something I like, I listen to it over and over again, or I eat it over and over again. And I have gotten into. I would have never called this before because I was more of a grunge and a hip hop girl. I was in high school in the 90s, so of course. And violin music, I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. It just what? And I never played the violin. I actually played the piano, but I don't know. I love strings for whatever reason. I find it so relaxing.
Oh, yeah.
And when I'm writing or when I'm creating, I can't have other words happening. It's too much for me.
Same.
So
totally.
I got to have the elevator music. As it turns out, I just have to have it.
Dude, I love it. I love it. Yeah. Yeah. Do you
have any other guilty pleasures besides your chips and your sparkling water?
Guilty pleasures. I mean, I love a good French fry, love a good slice of pizza. I'm a big sports fan, so the one thing that I always try to carve out time for is whatever sports is on. Otherwise, I mean, I try to stay married to the game, it's kind of cinema all day every day. Try to watch a lot of movies, stay connected to the community, show up for the people that I love and support, and to continue to try to keep the process of discovery going, try to push myself to see new things and not just watch the same stuff over and over again. So
love that.
And it's kind of sometimes and I'll be honest, sometimes it feels like work, a lot of times it feels like work, honestly. But then you have these moments where you come across something that you never thought of before. It just feels so alien. I felt that way at the Atlanta Film Festival watching David Fortune's movie Color Book, which just played at Seattle International Film Festival and has been making the rounds. It was like watching an alien movie. I would have never made any of the choices that he made, and yet they were so perfect and so incredible, and that's the moment when you're like, art does this incredible thing where you really get to step into somebody else's shoes and you get to be out of yourself for that 2 hours. And it was just so powerful, and it will stay with that experience will stay with me for the rest of my life. And that's all a credit to him and that team. And so that's the high that I am chasing at this point.
I love that. Well, everyone, make sure to check out Withdrawal. You can read more about it in features from Online Athens, Scene for Scene, and Fugitives. We'll put all the links in the show notes. Also, follow Aaron on Instagram at Stranded on Stage and check out his website, aaronstrand.net, for more on his film work and upcoming screenings. Aaron, thank you so much for sharing your story, for sharing your art and your soul with us today and through the film. From your snack attacks and, well, you know what? I never got to hear about the 4 speeding tickets now that I think about it.
Oh my God. You want to hear about it real quick?
Yeah, I do.
I'll tell you. Oh, yeah. Well, I'll make this real fast. Okay. I was 3 months sober. I still had like a bunch of shit in a storage unit in New York. And I had to go get this stuff out of storage. And for some reason, my parents let me borrow their car and drive from Georgia to New York City.
At 3 months sober?
Listen,
man, they love you.
Dude, I know. I would never trust my kid.
Hard pass.
And I was not an hour outside of town when I got my first ticket. I then was about 5 hours later, got a second ticket. I get to New York City. I get a ticket on the West Side Highway. I didn't even know that was possible to get pulled over in New York City, but I did. And I got my stuff. I was driving back down, and it was in North Carolina or something like that. I got the 4th one. So
and at no point you were like, maybe I should slow down a little bit.
Well, no, that was the line. That was the line that my sponsor said when I got back, and because I didn't want to tell anybody, I was so ashamed. I racked up. It was like $2,500 in speeding fines over the course of 4 days.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah, because there was one super speeder in there. So I got back to Georgia. I was like, "Hey man, so this thing happened," and that was his line. He was like, "Don't you think someone's trying to tell you to slow down?" And it forced me to get my first job in sobriety, because up until that point, my only job was being sober. And but it forced me to get my first job. I became an SAT tutor, and I had to get cracking fast, because I had to use all that money to pay off these speeding fines.
Tickets. Yeah.
So in a way, it kind of served its purpose. It kind of got my ass back into gear. But my God, that was not good. That was not good. But considering that I made it through all of active addiction without getting arrested, I feel like I owe.
Yeah, I feel like that. It kind of averages out. Your insurance must have been insane after that, though.
Bro, yeah, it was not good. Not good.
All right. Your journey reminds us that the messy middle can lead to magic. That's all the time we have. And as we like to say at the Sober Curator, getting sober matters. Staying sober matters more. Thanks for tuning in. This is Alysse Bryson. And until next time, keep it real, keep it fun, and keep it sober. Thanks for tuning in, because let's be real, we're way more fun than your ex's drunk texts.
If you laughed, learned, or just need more of our voices in your life, honestly, who wouldn't? Hit that subscribe button, leave us a review, and send this episode to your sober or your I swear I'm only drinking on the weekends besties.
And if you have a story, feedback, or hey, maybe you just want to slide into our DMs like it's 2012, well, we're here for it. Find more curated magic at thesobercurator.com. And remember, getting sober matters, staying sober matters more. Until next time, keep it real, keep it fun, and keep it sober.